it took me a long time to become Cheyenne Ortiz, and I wish I would have just been Cheyenne from the jump.
Welcome to the Tristen Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. Hey, if it's your first time here, welcome, because you're just in time for season 2, and I'm your host, Tristen Law. Man, it feels so good to be back, to be here and talk to you and give you this amazing podcast where I'm going to introduce you and possibly reintroduce you to some of the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. I've been gone for so long, I taught myself some new skills, and with those new skills, one of the enhancements that you will see in season 2 is that you'll now be able to watch this podcast on YouTube. All you gotta do is go to tristenlawshow.com, look for the YouTube logo, click the YouTube logo, and watch this episode and every episode in the future on YouTube. And when you get there, don't forget to subscribe, and you might see a bell. If you do see the bell, you should see the bell. Click the bell so you can be notified when I drop new episodes. I'll still be here in podcast format, so you can listen to me on your way to work, at the gym, because I don't recommend that you watch this podcast on YouTube while you're driving. It's dangerous. For today's guest, I'm going to introduce you to the voice, Cheyenne Ortiz. He is the premier voice of pro wrestling here in the Northeast on the independent wrestling scene. You can hear his voice at East Coast Pro Wrestling, Ace Pro Wrestling. That's right, 2 companies out of New Jersey. And he also has his own YouTube channel and some other cool things that we'll get into. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Cheyenne Ortiz. My next guest is one of the premier voice talents in New York and the New Jersey area. I'd like to welcome ring announcer and play-by-play commentator for East Coast Pro Wrestling, Ace Wrestling, and many more. He is the voice, Cheyenne Ortiz. Welcome to the Tristen Law Show. How are you, bro?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, Tristen. That's a nice intro.
Hey, you know what? Fun fact, you actually wrote that intro yourself on your social media, so thank you for writing that intro for me.
Nice. Okay, I'm glad. If my material's going to get plagiarized, I'm glad it's by you.
Hey, but at least I give credit, right? I'm just not like a regular thief. I just give credit.
That's true. You're better than Wikipedia.
So, hey, I was actually on your Instagram the other day, and I saw that you left a story, and the story was about Uno. I think you're pretty good at Uno, aren't you? Isn't that what you think?
Yeah, it hasn't trickled down to a locker room, but to try to trim the fat back in the day when I was in high school, in that ruthless aggression era, so you could have an idea when I was in high school, a lot of New York City schools were banning card games. And a lot of kids of the 90s played like spades, or if they had the old school grandmas, they knew how to play gin or rummy or go fish or all types of stuff. So for whatever reason, I guess there were kids who were doing gambling with card games, and it turned into, you couldn't play cards, but you could play Uno. Well, that was the worst thing that happened, because I became the king. I was already the king of the cafeteria, but I became one of the kings of Uno in my high school, and I was notorious for one card Uno. You've never lived until you've played one card Uno.
All right, so I think I'm the king of Uno, okay? And I think I'm pretty good at Uno. I collect Uno card decks. I only have 2 decks. I have one that I really play with, that there's no more, of the film on the outside. So I'm very familiar with Uno. So what is
you have the extremely annoying WWE Uno card deck?
I didn't know that was the thing. I'm gonna have to look for that now.
Yeah, and it comes, there's a couple versions. There's one from about 10 years ago that comes in a nice collectible tin can. And then there's the newer one that I got for a friend about 3-4 years ago. But it's one of those special Unos, so it's a special game that introduces a pinfall rule.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she told me it's a little confusing, but if you do it more and more, you get into it. But yeah, I back in my house party days and the cafeteria and all that stuff, which is a separate interview in and out of itself, Uno was notorious here in my house. And the 2 things were either cafeteria rules or house rules. So you had to play by the rules of the house or the high school cafeteria.
So, all right, good. That brings me directly into my next question, right? Because you were talking about house rules and cafeteria rules. So here's my question for you. When someone puts down a draw 4 or a draw 2, what in your rule set, what is the next legal card that they can play?
A draw.
Draw anything.
You can only play a draw. However, you cannot. So if you're playing in my house, you can draw a card. Now, if it is a wild draw, and you say draw 4 wild red, you cannot draw a draw 4 wild blue. You can only put out a wild draw or the suit that was called by the drawee.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
Excuse me, drawer.
I don't like that. You see, I feel if you drop a draw 4, yeah, I should be able to drop a draw 4. If you drop a draw 2, dude, any draw 2 works.
Anybody. I've seen no. Can I cuss on this?
Of course you can.
No bull crap. I've seen people.
Whoa. If you're going to cuss, do it right, Cheyenne.
Hey, listen, never mind. All right, I'm telling my story. I've seen people in my house pick up 20 plus cards because you could stack them on. The only thing, because it builds up, it's kind of like a match and the story. The only thing that you can't do, because it was a rule and I was like, enough of this shit, you can't do a skip.
Oh, I was going to say that. I've been wanting to try that for so long that when somebody throws a draw, to throw a skip.
You're like, if you're doing an Uno wild and you say draw 4 blue only, and then you come out with that blue 4, all right, that's 8. Now if you threw down a blue 4. If you come with the red 2, okay, now we're at 10. If the next person has that wild, okay, that builds up. If the person that's about to get screwed with, let's just say 15, 16 cards throws a skip, it's a piece of you can't skip it, baby.
All right, I'll give you that. I'm
a firm believer that even if you draw 20 cards, you can get rid of them in 2 moves.
You sure can. If you know how to play, you sure can.
Yeah, the one thing that I don't allow in my house is number stacks. So if you have, let's just say, because this happens in Uno, let's just say you have yellows, and let's just say you have 2 1s, a 2, and a 3, and you throw them all down, not happening.
Right. I agree with that.
Number stacks. You can't do number stacks. I've seen people do that. Now, if you do a yellow, blue, a yellow 2, a blue 2, a red 2, that's fine.
Right. Yep. You could do number stacks. No color. I've done that.
But yeah, what was the term that I think I would call it number stacks?
Yes, number stacks or color stacks. Yep.
Yeah, because I would see people do legit cards 1 through 5 of different suits. I'm like, no, you can't do that.
So I was poking around on your YouTube, and I saw that you do unboxing of action figures. Talk to us a little about the unboxing and the interest people have online when it comes to unboxing.
So I started doing unboxing videos because, I kid you not, I had developed raffle and eBay wins 8 foot tall. I had boxes and packages that they had accumulated to about 7 or 8 feet tall, and they were about 5 feet wide. I had a stack of cardboard boxes, and a year and a half ago, I had COVID, and I was on the shelf for 3 weeks, and I started opening shit up after I was on the shelf for 3 weeks. The most radical was about 10 days. So in that last week, I was like, you know what? I'm home. I know I got to go back to work soon. Let me start opening this stuff up. So I started, redoing my room here because I'm an action figure collector. And after a while, I still had a ton of boxes left, like way too many. And I just didn't get around to it. And I started seeing people do unboxings and reviews. And there is an audience for it, except for me, you don't know what I'm opening.
Do you know what you're opening?
Most times, no. I put a head in the video, whether I know or not. But if you look at the early videos, I have no idea what it is because I was getting so much.
Right.
Because I was winning, I'm in various Facebook groups for action figures and I do raffles and stuff. So I was winning a lot of stuff. So sometimes I could tell you what they were, but I couldn't tell you which box it was. But by the time I got to it, I genuinely forgot. And that's how that started. And I kid you not, I have about 7 more boxes sitting over there that I have to open. They'll all be on the unboxing videos on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cheyenne the Voice, or you could catch me on Linktree, linktr.ee/Cheyenne the Voice. Of those 7 boxes, I probably, top of my head, only know about 5.
So what do you think is so?
If that.
So what do you think is so interesting about people that unbox boxes on the internet? Because I've watched.
I think because everybody likes a gift, right? Everybody likes a present. Everybody likes getting something. Everybody likes seeing a genuine reaction. And if you watch my videos, while they don't have millions and millions of views, you could tell that everything that is happening is truly genuine. And also, people want to know, especially in the action figure market, people want to know what something looks like when you get it. Everybody wants to know. Everybody sees that there's, like air fryers were the big thing during lockdown, right? And just before that. So everybody knows that they could get an air fryer, but if I reviewed an air fryer and it's the one you're eyeballing and you're seeing it in person and being used, that's a different story altogether. So I might get an action figure I usually buy stuff that's older, but if I get an action figure that you've been eyeballing at Target or Walmart for a while, you're seeing it in person, you're seeing the packaging, you're seeing how it's mailed to you. Right. Because if you're an action figure collector and you're buying at retail, how it's mailed to you is a very, very big thing. And I often don't mince words if the packaging is good or bad, whether I bought it off of a friend or not.
So I want to switch gears to pro wrestling. And obviously, you're in the pro wrestling industry. Pro wrestling. Hey, we all love it, brother. You're a play-by-play person. You're a ring announcer. What was the moment that you realized that you were hooked to pro wrestling?
So the story goes, I'm about 3-4 years old, and I'm one of 3 brothers, and my older brother Joseph, the middle one. Apparently I was like hawking him all day because he was one of my heroes as a kid because he was like the cool cat in town. And so I always wanted to be around him. So one day he's like, hey, just chill out. Just watch this. Here, sit down. Let's watch this video. And it was wrestling. So the story goes. And I was hooked from then on. I'm born in 1990, but all of our VHS library at the time was predominantly 80s wrestling. So that's how I got hooked, and that's how I knew. And if I had to pinpoint it to one event, we had on VHS recorded, not store-bought, because we bought the pay-per-view, WrestleMania 8. I'm not going to sit here and say it's one of the best WrestleMania evers. That's subjective. Everybody has their own opinions. However, that's probably the Mania, the tape, and the moment that I was like, this is amazing.
So who are your favorite wrestlers, or who did you look up to in the pro wrestling industry while you were growing up?
So when I was a wrestling fan that wanted to be a wrestler as a kid, from jump, it was Macho Man Randy Savage. From the jump, it was Randy Savage. I know it's a very cliche, typical answer, but if you look at what I grew up on, it kind of makes sense. Randy Savage was the number one, and it eventually morphed into Ric Flair because everybody who knows me knows I'm a diehard Ric Flair fan. So yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ric Flair, The Undertaker. I'm a big Gray Glove fan of The Undertaker. In terms of WCW, I actually prefer Rick Rude in WCW over the WWE any day. Same with Ricky Steamboat, WCW over the WWE runs any day. Of course, Sting. I was a massive, as a kid, I was a massive big Van Vader fan. And when I started watching wrestling on my own, by the time I'm 4 or 5 years old, watching it every week, Monday Night Raw is the hottest show on television. And I got to literally, like many of us, live the Monday Night Wars.
Mm-hmm. So what was it that drew you to pro wrestling? Because there's something that caught you and said, hey, come be with us. What was it?
I think now, hindsight being 2020, it was everything about wrestling. You ever watch a movie as a kid and you're laughing and you have no idea what it is about it or what they're even saying or the context of it, and then you watch it as an adult and you're like, oh, this is even funnier than I remember. Because as a kid, we saw a lot of movies that we really shouldn't have, that we enjoyed, that we loved, that we probably didn't even understand. And now we watch them with such deep affection and admiration. I think it was wrestling as a whole. Wrestling has presentation like no other. You could say whatever you want. I'm not a big sports fan, but wrestling has a presentation like no other, from top to bottom, from the curtain to the guardrail. There is no presentation in the world like pro wrestling. The only thing that comes close to it is a live concert, and that depends on who you're seeing.
That is true.
So I think it's wrestling as a whole, because as a kid, I appreciated the commentary. I already was mimicking commentary at a very, very early age. So I think it was wrestling as a whole, because it was a very character-induced era, okay? Even if you look at the early Nitro stuff, it was a very character-induced era. And it was characters, right? We all, how many times are we sitting in the locker room and we're like, if this guy just got a gimmick, if this guy just did this, because we all know deep down inside, you could be the best wrestler in the world, but if you don't have that edge, I'm not saying you got to be a full cartoon,
right?
But if you don't have some edge there, it's a little harder for you in the race. So, and not that there's anything wrong with being a pure textbook wrestler. That's not what I'm saying, because some of my favorite wrestlers ever are just pure Wigan strong style wrestlers. So yeah, I think it's wrestling as a whole. It's the presentation. It's everything, right? It's everything. It's the belts. It's the commentators. It's the stages and the arenas. It's the ring. Because, if you see WWE and then you see AEW and then you go to the right indie fed, their ring sticks out like a sore thumb, because MLW's probably got the sexiest looking ring in all of wrestling right now. And then you got the NWA ring, which looks like this giant piece of art coming to life, and then you got the WWE one with the LED screens. You've got that AEW ring with all the dark colors, and it looks like you're at this, place you shouldn't even be at, So I think it's wrestling as a whole.
Bro, I've never had anybody sit here and poetically explain to me like the art of pro wrestling. Like I look at pro wrestling like art, but I've never looked at pro wrestling in the light that you put it, that it's so, like, you said the ring was sexy. And then when you said it, I smiled because I saw that.
Well, you smile because you're also a closet creep like me. I get it. I get it. It's all right.
So you mentioned earlier that you wanted to be a pro wrestler, but you mentioned that you also mimicked the commentary. So I'm not sure some days, maybe I made the right choice, or maybe you made the right choice in the pro wrestling business. But, how did you decide to become a commentator instead of a pro wrestler?
So if you look at, I learned right away at a very, very early age that, listen, I'm 5'5", so I was probably as a teenager 3'7". So I learned right away that there wasn't anybody my size on television. There wasn't. Yes, of course, there were Benoit and Eddie. Oh, I shouldn't even say that name. Wild Pegasus. There was Wild Pegasus and Eddie and Malenko and those guys that we constantly talk about, but they're all taller than me. So it kind of became a thing right away. I think if I would have seen someone at an early age, my size, hitting certain strides, I'm born in 1990. I got to wait 25 years for Daniel Bryan to win the world title, right? Not that he's 5'5", but there's no one, that underdog story is not being told. And I never saw myself as a luchador wrestler. No offense to Rey Mysterio. I never saw myself as that. I always saw myself more of a Regal or a Flair, that Mac technician with just the right amount of charisma, or at least that's how I put it in the video games, So at an early age, when I would play with my action figures, I would commentate my matches. And, I wouldn't commentate them like, oh, suplex. Oh, he's got him now. Like, I'd see other kids like playing with their action figures, their wrestling figures. And I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, I'd be super judgy about how they would call their matches as a kid. Like, that's not how you do it. And, I think I had the best era of commentators, some of which are still here today. Say what you want. Vince McMahon as a commentator was amazing. Superbly underrated. And if you listen to Vince McMahon as a commentator, to go back to me overanalyzing everything, if you listen to Vince McMahon as a commentator, hindsight being 2020, the business is a lot more exposed. You know who he was and wasn't into. If you listen to him, he is getting over people the way he wants. If you truly listen to Vince McMahon as a commentator, the heels and the faces, he's getting them over. He is literally probably at that time at the driver's seat, even though he's past the curtain, he is getting people over. If you watch it now as an adult, you're watching Vince and you're like, man, he's doing this guy all the favors he can as a commentator. Of course, as a kid, you don't realize that. So Vince is a commentator. I am a massive fan of Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone, to me, is the best commentator today. Today is Tony Schiavone, and probably Michael Cole right behind him. I saw Michael Cole, obviously, when he first started in 97, and look at him now. He's been the face of WWE for 25 years.
Right.
That's wow. Of course, you got to put Jim Ross in the conversation, right? You know, so many great commentators. I'm going to pull out a name that often doesn't get a lot of respect. Lee Marshall, as a commentator, was perennial. And once the AWA died out, he never got that much respect. But if you watch him in the 90s during some of those Thunders and the Saturday shows, he was awesome. So there was this golden age of announcers and voices that I just loved. And I started commentating Backyard Feds. And then eventually through networking, as more people were doing, as you know the term, I don't think it's even being used anymore, backyard fed shows.
Right.
At certain wrestling schools and arenas through networking. That's how I got in.
Mine was actually a pro wrestling backyard fed in a park in the Bronx. That's where I got my start.
Yeah, I started in a park too, just a few blocks from my house. And I wrestled very little, but commentary was always the passion. I call myself the original Santino because I wasn't that great, but I was very, very entertaining. So I compensated for what I couldn't do with humor and spots or whatever. So, but yeah, I started out at a backyard fed. I did that for a couple of years, and then eventually through networking, I got into doing it professionally. And fun fact, I have called, because not everybody could say this, I can say that I've called one backyard proud and powerful match and one professional. So not everybody can say they did both. I have.
So now that we know how you got into the pro wrestling business, looking at how you are now a professional commentator and sometimes occasionally a ring announcer, how do you prepare for your play-by-play commentary before a show?
So I hate to say this. It depends on what fed I'm at. And I say that because since my home fed is American Championship Entertainment, Ace Pro Wrestling, run by Mike Morgan, which is coming up on the 20th anniversary. It's a little harder on those show days because I'm doing so much in terms of the preparation and the setup and finalizing things with Mike, of course. So I try to prep for those shows the night before. So those shows I try to prep the night before. You know, now with the advent of the internet, most times out of 10, if I can Google or YouTube somebody, I can at least know their name. Or because back in the day, when I started, you had to go up to them, hey, man, tell me about yourself.
Right.
Which wasn't always a joyous conversation because some of these guys wouldn't really describe themselves in the best way. You know, they could tell you what moves they did and didn't do, but they couldn't tell you about themselves. They couldn't sell you. So now I try my best the night before, not for the sake of last minute, for the sake of it being fresh. The night before, if somebody's on the show for the first time, all right, let me see if there's any matches on this Tristen Law guy. Okay, he's got a couple matches. I try to watch at least two because I'm a firm believer that if I watch two of your matches, it shouldn't be the same match. So, you know, like, yeah, of course, you're going to get your hits in and your spots, but it shouldn't be the same match. If I saw you wrestle Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they shouldn't be carbon copies. So I try to watch at least two matches, try to get an idea, an organic idea of what your moveset's like. And then when I meet you in person, hey, what's your finish? Does your finish have a name? Because you might hit a pile driver and you might have a name for it.
Right.
So you don't want me to call pile driver because then a month later or whenever the tape comes out, you might be like, hey, man, my finisher is named The Last Call. Well, it's a double-edged sword. You didn't approach me. I didn't approach you. And technically, I got to approach you as the professional. as the guy calling it, telling the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I try my best to know as much as I can. I like to know where guys trained, you know, because that's something that you should sell on commentary. You know, if somebody trained at Lance Storm's Academy, well, that's something you want to get out there.
True.
For the sake of the guy, because I'm a firm believer that, you know, so many commentators and ring announcers get themselves over, but ultimately you're a storyteller. Ultimately, you're getting the talent over. The best way a commentator can get over is by getting the guys over. You are an accessory. The wrestling is the steak, and everything else is a side dish. That's my opinion.
I think I agree with your opinion because I learned a little bit of a commentary when I went to broadcasting school over the summer. And one of the things I learned is that the play-by-play guy draws the picture in just, let's say a pencil. And then the color commentary person comes in and they add the color and the flavor. They're the sizzle, to the whole commentary thing. And I have an issue when I listen to commentary on the indies and their guys pretty much trying to get their gimmicks over at the commentary table. If you're not a wrestler, you shouldn't really be trying to get your gimmick over or get your persona over. You should be trying to get over the story in the ring because there usually is 99% of the time there's an underlying story. So the commentary should be telling the stories. The play-by-play guy says, hey, this is the move that's happening right now. And, he's got him in a headlock. And the color guy comes in and goes, yeah, who should have some experience, comes in and says, yeah, if you put a headlock on like that, you squeeze it a little bit, you might put that guy to sleep. Something like that, adding the color. A lot of people don't understand. That's a
double-edged sword because your color guy, I have a pet peeve.
Let me hear it.
If the color guy wasn't a wrestler, he shouldn't analyze it as a wrestler.
I agree.
If the color guy was never in the ring, there's kind of a limitation to you selling that hold because you were never in it. You want to sell its effectiveness and how it's going to work to the game plan for the heel, the face, whatever color guy, whatever side he's on, or if he's neutral, how the end game is, that hold will get you to victory. You can't sell to me as a color guy, as so many heel color guys do, the effectiveness of that hold and how much it hurts when, I don't know, the last time you were in a ring.
Good point.
So that's just me. You got to sell it as, like, if I'm a babyface commentator, I'm going to sell to you the figure 4 and how it has 4 points of pressure. It's one of the most lethal leg locks that you could apply as a technician wrestler. I'm not going to sit there and say, whoa, man, that figure 4, it hurts so bad. I tell you, it's one of the most painful holds you can be in. That is probably the max that you could go, because now as the fan, it's like, well, when were you in a figure 4?
Right.
Verbiage is everything in commentary, obviously. Another thing, too, when you're in the indies, you don't have the luxury of the video packages, the highlight reel, and live wrestling. So you got to set everything up. You got to tell that story, and you got to be ready to tell it.
So looking back at the first time you did play-by-play or ring announced, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Is there anything I would have done differently? I think the first thing I would have done was breathed. I think if I would have just breathed, I mean that both seriously and humorously, if I would have just breathed and chilled out, I think I would have done better. The first time I did ring announcing, to be fair, the main thing I did wrong was, it's my fault. I didn't really ask and nobody showed me either. I didn't stand on the hard camera side. I didn't stand on the hard camera side. The building had a weird layout. So if I'm facing you, the audience was to my right because it was in the old Ace Arena. And for some reason, I didn't feel as if I should face them. And I felt as if I shouldn't have given my back to them. So I guess you could say I kind of stood next to them.
Right.
So that was something that haunts me to this day, especially when I see the tape back whenever somebody pulls it up. In terms of commentary, when I first started doing commentary, I was trying to be like little Jim Ross. So I was hitting like all of Jim Ross's and Joey Styles' lines. And it took me a long time to become Cheyenne Ortiz. And I wish I would have just been Cheyenne from the jump.
I feel that. There's already been Jim Ross and Jim Ross, who was the soundtrack to my childhood. I get that. I get that 100%. So to somebody that doesn't understand, why is it important? What is the hard cam, and why is it important for somebody to, as we say, work the hard cam?
So the hard cam, when you watch Monday Night Raw or AEW or whatever it is, that camera that everybody's facing during the promo while they're holding their microphone and they're doing this, that's the hard cam. That's the hard camera. That's the main camera. That's the storytelling camera. Now, while yes, most professional wrestling shows have an 8 to 25 camera shoot, you want to work the hard cam or the camera closest to your right shoulder, because usually 9 times out of 10, that's the camera angle that is centered on you. So obviously, if you've got a chin lock and you're working it on the ground, you're not going to stand up and bring that chin lock up to the hard cam. You're going to look over your right shoulder and see if there's a camera near you, and you're going to get that mean mug on, and you're going to get that cell lock. But if you're telling a story in that promo and how this Saturday night in the fairgrounds, Tristen Law, it's going to come down to showtime, that's the camera that you want to give all that facial expression to and all that angst. So, you know, a lot of guys on top of wrestling for themselves don't really, I can't encourage this enough. I say it to all you guys in all the locker rooms, you know, it's important for you to know the production aspect of wrestling. And if you ever have a tryout somewhere, the fact that you know that gets you that edge, gets you a little bit ahead of things, and gets you to a point where, oh, wow, this guy kind of has his footing. Everybody knows the hard cam, but they don't know their wraparound camera. They don't know their boom. You know, they don't know that other sequence. They just know the hard cam just so they can hit their pose for the entrance or for, you know, when they get in the ring. You know, they don't know about it any other time later, you know, but it's important, you know.
I like that. That's some pretty good advice.
Yeah.
Someone wanted to get into the pro wrestling business in a non-wrestling capacity like you do. How would you guide them? What are your recommendations to them? Practice.
And I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to name names. Plus, they're newer in not the business, but the commentary field. Quick, short story. We were talking about podcasts before we went on the air here. Mm-hmm. It was, what Mania was that where they were in New York, New Jersey, 2018, 19?
Yeah, that was one of them. Yeah, maybe 19.
So I had done a couple different things during the week. I had worked a show for Crowbar because he was still doing Rescue Mania, his Fed at the time. And I'd done a couple different things. Well, I went to go see Tony Schiavone and Eric Bischoff live. And because they do their podcast or whatever. And I asked them that same question. And I passed this advice to everybody. Find your voice. Find your voice. There's already a Jim Ross, a Michael Cole, a Tony Schiavone. There's already a Cheyenne Ortiz. Not that he's anybody famous or big. I'm not trying to put myself in that same category, but there's already a me. You need to be you. And the same thing for a lot of wrestlers. You know, yeah, you could wrestle every weekend, but you got to practice. So the biggest advice that I could tell anybody wanting to get into this as a commentator, as a ring announcer, practice. I think it's the Ole Ayers rule that it's 1,000 hours over the course of a certain amount of time makes you a master at your craft, but you never really master it because you can always keep learning. Mm-hmm. Practice. Watch matches. Learn the timing of when to talk. Learn when to lay out. Learn to tell stories and tell moves. Get an old wrestling game. Go to the create a superstar option. Go to the create a moveset option and look at every single move the game has to offer from every single position. Get your ass a GameCube and get yourself one of them old, who made those Day of Reckoning games? Was that THQ? Whoever it was.
Yep, THQ.
All right. Go in there and learn as many moves as you can. Try to make them stick. because I knew what a Falcon Arrow was before a lot of commentators was. I knew what the Alpamare water slide was. You know, no offense to Hangman Page, but I saw that move 15 years ago on my video game system. Nobody was doing it. Well, that's a lie. That's bullshit. People were doing it in Japan.
Right.
But he was the first guy that I ever saw do it in the States, Hangman Page. I think somebody did it in WWE very briefly in like 06. But the point of the matter is, be that wrestling Rolodex. That's what you got to be. Crowbar does. Crowbar, believe it or not, was wrestling either Sebastian Cage or someone, a high flyer. And Sebastian was going to do the Meteora. Crowbar didn't know what it was. He just knew how to explain it. And Sebastian knew right away what it was. And I just happened to be sitting with them as they called the match, because Crowbar like tapped me around to call while he called his matches, so I could kind of know when shit was coming. And I was like, oh, you're going to do the Meteora then at that point? Because if you are, I'm going to sell it. He's like, you know what that is? And I was like, yeah. I thought I was in trouble for knowing what it was. Like, yeah. He's like, shit, I don't think any other commentator or whatever. So that's it. You know, if you want to do this, do this. Don't play this. I get very, very... I get very, very personal when I see people, I love wrestling, I want to do this, and blah, 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 blah. And they only do it to a certain extent, especially in my field. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if I see somebody just wearing tights and they're only wrestling once a week, you know how the wrestling locker room is. I'm wrong for doing that. Right? Because I'm a commentator. I'm not a wrestler. That's the moment where all of a sudden you ain't one of the boys. Okay. Well, guess what? If I see you as a commentator or announcer and you're dicking around, yeah, you know, do this. Oh, and another piece of advice, wear a fucking suit. Wear a suit. If you're the commentator, you shouldn't be there looking a certain way.
I get that. I respect that.
Straight up.
I like that.
Straight up. Because I saw somebody the other day calling a match, and I almost lost my shit over what they were wearing.
Well, you know, there's a lot of, I've been seeing those things as well, too. Now that I've been woke, I see what people are, you know, not doing. They're not doing the homework like you do. They're just going out there calling the matches. They don't know when to lay out. And laying out means, you know, to just let it breathe. Like, you don't have to talk every 5 seconds. And then they step on each other, meaning that they're trying to talk on each other. Like, sometimes you just got to chill, you know, like The Rock said, you need to know your role and shut your mouth. Yeah. And that's how I think that works. I saw a commentator get blown up one time. I kid you not. Really?
I saw a commentator get blown up one time because he was using his announcer voice the entire time that he called the match. And I kid you not, by the time the double down came, the guy was, this is an incredible match that we're seeing here. I was ready to give him my albuterol. Not a rib. Not a rib.
He blew himself up.
Blew himself up. And I was on color that night. I was like, oh, this is going to be bad.
So how did you develop your trademark voice? Because you've got a voice, bro, regardless of you thinking about it or not. You have this trademark voice that when I hear it, I go, yep, that's my guy, Cheyenne.
So I always had this voice. It always stuck out. I always got made fun of it for it. I still get made fun of for it, but I'm in therapy. So I guess through the years in the 90s, as you know, commercials were everything in the 90s, but they also came on all the damn time. So I always mimicked commercials and voices. And going back to a name that I brought up earlier, I was a huge fan of Lee Marshall. And Lee Marshall, to me, had the perfect voice for wrestling, for radio, for anything. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. Lee Marshall was Tony the Tiger. Tony the Tiger, the cereal commercial. I think he did that from 97, 90-something until his death. So they're great. That's Lee Marshall until, like, I think he passed away in, like, 2013 or so from cancer. So my voice is kind of a hybrid of all those car commercials and stuff from the 90s, as well as Lee Marshall and David Penzer. David Penzer was a big influence on me because everybody wanted to be Howard Finkel, right?
Right.
So, you know, I learned right away that I couldn't do that because there was already one. That was the one person I didn't mimic because Howard Fink, he would never say, he would almost never say for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. He would always say World Wrestling Federation. He would never say WWF. So I always try to mimic the commentators and the announcers, because when I would play with my action figures, I wanted that same authenticity. And like a lot of times you'll see me kind of bust it out. Like I'll bust out a Vince, like over the top, that selling, that high pitch, you got to also know when to change your voice too. So it was just I've been commentating since I'm like 5 years old, right? And I've been doing this at a level since I'm 13. And I've been doing this professionally since I'm 24. And every day when I come home from work, I call 2 matches before I go to bed.
Wow.
So I love telling stories. So it's just a lot of practice and a lot of time put into it. I don't know how it developed, obviously, as I got older, because I think this became my voice kind of finalized to this point when I was about 20, 22 is when I was noticing certain pitch changes and stuff like that also. So yeah, just over time it developed. And I also just kind of like speak like this as is. Don't get me wrong. If we're chilling, it has a different tone or decibel, but no matter what, once the camera's on, hello everyone, this is the voice Cheyenne Ortiz. That's my version of, hello everyone, welcome to WCW Saturday Night. We're here in that's my version of doing what the announcers did 35 years ago. So it's just a modern spin on it. Cause I'm, back in the day, it was always, hello everyone, or hello fans. And then no matter what, at the end of so long, everybody. So I already have that programmed in my head.
Bro, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I know. I'm a loser.
Nah, it's not even like I'm sitting here and I'm like mesmerized and I'm like, wow, that's like really cool that you have this much level of dedication that you even go home and you practice 2 matches every night. So normally on a normal good week where there's nothing else going on, no distractions, you're getting in 14 matches a week, bro. That's amazing.
I try to get in at least 5, but yeah, sometimes I'll do 14. And what a lot of people don't know, we talked about it earlier. During lockdown, we didn't know each other yet, but I commentated while having COVID matches live on Instagram.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
So like during the lockdown, the only reason I stopped was because after a while the views weren't really that great. Like on my first one, I did like 100 and something. And by like my 5th one, I was down to like 12 people. I was like, all right, this kind of died out.
Right. But
I was commentating matches during COVID. On the weekends, I was still practicing matches, still practicing promos. And I don't know if you knew this, for this past WrestleMania on night 1, I commentated it live.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I was kind of a commentary companion. Because all the time when people watch wrestling shows, they're like, oh, man, I'm tired of Michael Cole. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. So I provided that alternative because, now how Bruce Pritchard does his watch-along shows. So you're going back, you're watching these shows from 30 years ago. You have them on mute and you're listening. You're not even listening to commentary.
Right.
You're listening to Bruce's inside trade on the whole booking process of it. So I started doing that, which I'm sure now that I've said that, someone else is going to steal it, which is fine. So, I try to be as innovative as possible.
So with all this dedication that you have, Cheyenne, if WWE, AEW, or some other pro wrestling promotion with the money to change your quality of life is listening, why are you the best person that they should sign to a contract?
Because I'm a salesman. I'm a salesman. I have a retail background, and I have, those of you that have seen me do it and know me, I can sell you walking in the door. I can sell you walking in the door. I can tell you stories. The versatility that I provide as a commentator is kind of sort of second to none on the indies. I bring a level of professionalism and prep that, again, is second to none on the indies. I've been calling matches since I'm 13 years old. If a lot of ring announcers and commentators are doing the stats for how many people they've ring announced or this or that, if I pull up the stats for how many matches I've called, that trend will die out immediately. Immediately. And I don't play this. And I don't have, with the exception of liking to sleep in, I don't have many bad habits. You don't have to retrain me. And when you've trained under Mike Morgan and Gino Caruso, Vince McMahon could yell at me on a Monday night and I'll be like, is that all you got? So if nothing else, I promise you that I will give you everything that I have at every taping, every pay-per-view, every live show. Plus, I'm handsome.
Money. So for people listening, right, and they still don't know who you are, tell them, who is Cheyenne Ortiz?
Who is Cheyenne Ortiz? Hello, everyone. This is the voice, Cheyenne Ortiz, the voice of New York State. Commentator for all your favorite local promotions, including American Championship Entertainment and ECPW Wrestling, both of which you can catch at aceprowrestling.com and ECPW1. You can catch me on YouTube, unboxing action figures and collectibles, as well as giving inside track to your favorite independent stars of today, tomorrow, and the future. For those of you who still need to know about me, fun fact, I have trained with the likes of Sonny Kiss, Ortiz, and Santana. I was there for MJF's rookie year. I called one of the last independent matches for not just Dan Moff, but for Keith Lee before his signing. I was there when Sonny Kiss and EC3 broke the internet. That moment and so many more in the state of New Jersey and New York have my voice attached to it. So once again, you can catch me on linktree.com. That's linktr.ee/Cheyenne the Voice for all of information regarding to Cheyenne Ortiz, the voice.
What's next for Cheyenne Ortiz?
Cheyenne Ortiz is looking to do his first show out of New York and New Jersey. I did a couple shows in Pennsylvania over the summer. I kind of don't count that because it's still Northeast. But the number one goal for Cheyenne Ortiz next year is to do at least one show out of state. I can confirm for you, because there is no formal announcement, you will see me debut at a I shouldn't say brand new. You will see me debut at an independent wrestling fed that, if you know the history of it, you would have never guessed that I'll be there. So I'll be, I'm trying the best that I can to get myself out there more and more and more. I'm at a point where next year I'll be 8 years in the business, next year in May. And I'm just trying to do more and get myself out there more. And for me, as long as you give me a couple bucks to get something to eat, you know, I'm good. You know, I'm pretty straight. You know, I love wrestling, and you know, the ultimate goal. Jay Lethal said something one time that changed my life completely. When I started in the business, of course, you want to make it to WWE, right? At that time, WWE was the only thing. But he said something at a training seminar that he did. He's like, of course, yeah, I wanted to get to WWE. You know, I eventually ended up a Ring of Honor, but like many things in life, my goals change. And he said, my goal changed because I wanted to make a living off of pro wrestling. I wanted to be able to quit my day job and live off of pro wrestling. And when you're in the independents, that is the golden ticket, right? A lot of people can't say that they live off their weekends, because that's what it is in indie wrestling. If you got a booking on a Wednesday or a Thursday, that's actually a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big deal. So, you know, for me, the goal is to live off of wrestling. And if somebody's willing to do that, be it Tony Khan or Vince McMahon or Court Bauer or Mr. Corrigan over there at the NWA, that's the goal, you know, whether it happens today, tomorrow, or a couple tomorrows from now. I'd love for that to be the thing, to make a living off of pro wrestling, because it isn't working when it's what you love.
I agree. I 100% agree. Cheyenne, thank you so much for hanging out with me here on the Tristen Law Show.
Thanks for having me. Fun fact. Yeah, no, this is it. You are the first person ever to interview me, ever.
Really?
Nobody, I'm always doing the interviewing.
So, well, hey, you know what? I'm a broadcaster. I like to entertain and I like to bring product to people, and I hope that they definitely enjoy this. And I'm glad to have the honor that one day when you write your book, you're going to say, hey, that guy Tristen Law, he was the guy to first interview me. But again, I know you've done it so much during this interview. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
You can catch me at Linktree. So Linktree, I recommend to all. If you're in the Indies, get a Linktree. I think it's called the Drop Link is also another great website to use, but get a Linktree because with Linktree, that allows somebody to see every single bit of your social media. So if you're clicking on my Linktree, you can catch me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can get my Amazon wish list for when I launch my Closet OnlyFans page. Just kidding, not really. So on Instagram, you can catch me at Cheyenne the Voice. On Twitter, it's Cheyenne Ortiz _. I hope. That's why I got to go to my Linktree because I always forget my Twitter. That's why I always sell my Linktree because I never remember my Twitter. YouTube.com/Cheyenne the Voice. And of course, Facebook.com/Cheyenne Ortiz the Voice, my fan page. And you can drop me an email at Cheyenne Ortiz bookings@AOL.com. So yeah, catch me anytime. Lots of great content coming on my YouTube channel. Very happy to announce that I'll be streaming some retro gaming. If you like old school wrestling games, I'm going to be catching you with that. And I can now confirm that starting next year on my YouTube channel, I will be doing watch along. So you're going to have me calling classic matches, except it's me going to be commentating it by myself. And the first match will be Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, WrestleMania 24, the retirement match. I'm going to call that on my YouTube channel next year.
Hey, that's amazing. And I can't wait to see all these things come to life in the next year. But ladies and gentlemen, that was ring announcer, play-by-play commentator for East Coast Pro Wrestling, Ace Pro Wrestling, and so much more. That was the voice, Cheyenne Ortiz. Cheyenne, I will see you soon, and thank you for coming on the Tristen Law Show.
Before we go, I know you signed off, but I can't stress this enough because I want to bring it up because I hope he's listening. One of the best things that the championship committee at ECPW did was give you a live microphone. And I mean, you have impressed me so much reacting on the fly, cutting your promos live over at Ridgefield Park during those TV tapings. I can't stress it enough. From a work rate to an entertainment value, Tristen Law is somebody that you always have room for on your wrestling shows, promoters. He's not an announcer yet, but I see a bright future for him down the road when he hangs up his Sherpa Moo. But from an entertainment standpoint, from bell to bell, Tristen Law is somebody that fits on everybody's show.
I'm not going to get emotional over that. I'm just going to thank you very much for those kind words because I don't think I've remembered anybody ever telling me that. I appreciate it, brother. And I appreciate the fact that people allow me to entertain them every single week. And I can't wait to continue to entertain people in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you, man.